Whenever we talk about true crime, it's so easy to get caught up in the twists and turns of the investigation, the courtroom drama, the how did they finally catch him part. But before we go anywhere near that, I want to sit with the person at the center of this story because Renee Sweeney wasn't a headline. She wasn't a case file. She was a young woman with a life, with dreams, with people who loved her. Renee was 23 years old in January of 1998. Think about that for just a second. 23. That age where you're just starting to figure out who you are, where you're going, and what you want your life to look like. You're old enough to have some independence, but young enough that the future still feels wide open. That's where Renee was. She was a student at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario. If you've ever been to Sudbury, you know it's a city with a very particular character. It's northern, it's rugged, it's got this mix of mining town grit and university town energy. In the winter, it's cold, snowy, and the kind of place where you bundle up and walk fast to get to where you're going. But it's also a place where people know each other, where community matters. Renee was studying music, and that tells you something right away, doesn't it? Music students are a special breed. They're disciplined because you don't get through hours of practice without discipline. But they're also creative, expressive, and usually deeply connected to the people around them. Friends described her as vibrant, kind, and full of life. She had this energy that drew people in. And like so many students, she was working part-time to help support herself. Her job was at a video store on Paris Street. Now, if you're old enough to remember the 90s, you know what a video store meant back then. This was before streaming, before Netflix, before everything was on demand. If you wanted to watch a movie, you went to the video store. You browsed the shelves, you picked up VHS tapes. You chatted with the person behind the counter about what was good. It was a social hub as much as it was a business. So picture Renee there. She's behind the counter, maybe recommending a movie to a customer, maybe chatting with a regular. It's a normal job, but it's also a place where she connected with people. Her friends and family remembered her as someone who was always smiling, always ready to help, always present. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to be the center of attention. She was just genuinely kind. And that's part of why her story hit Sudbury so hard. Because when you lose someone like that, it feels like the whole community loses a little bit of its light. Let's set the scene a little more. Sudbury in the late 90s was a city in transition. The mining industry was still central, but the university and the hospital were big parts of the community too. Paris Street, where Renee worked, was one of the main arteries of the city. People drove it every day, passing by the video store without a second thought. It was the kind of city where people knew each other, not in the sense that everyone was best friends, but in the sense that faces were familiar. You'd see the same people at the grocery store, at the rink, at the coffee shop. And when something happened to one of those familiar faces, it rippled out fast. That's what happened with Renee. When the news broke, it wasn't just a story on the radio. It was personal. People said, I knew her, or I saw her at the store last week, or she was in my class. It was close. Renee's world was one of music, friends, family, and the everyday routines of a young adult. She was balancing school and work, figuring out her path, and enjoying the independence that comes with being in your early 20s. She wasn't famous. She wasn't someone who sought the spotlight. She was just living her life, like so many of us do at that age.